Hello, everybody. This week, we are talking about some of my favorite topics, which are compassion and vulnerability. And we'll also talk about resources, referrals, and support systems. First, let's talk about compassion. What is compassion? Compassion is a deep feeling of sympathy or empathy and sorrow for another person's misfortune, but also it's combined with a strong desire to alleviate the suffering, right? It's okay to feel bad for people. It's okay to be like, oh, that sucks. But a true sense of compassion is, I want to help make this better, right? Maybe we can't, and maybe there's nothing that we could do to solve these sort of things, but the desire to alleviate that suffering is really what compassion is about. That's why us in the health field and services field look towards how do we make people feel better and healthier and cope with all these sort of things. A lot of the techniques that you learn in the public health program are around alleviating suffering in some way or another, because that is part of our profession. Now, one of the things that's really important is to understand the difference between sympathy and empathy. Sympathy is something that anybody can experience. You're trying to understand the experience of others. You're trying to understand what it is that they're feeling, but it doesn't necessarily come from a place of, you know what they're talking about, right? And so that is a totally regular sort of feeling. We don't all have experience with all sorts of things and topics. Now, empathy is a slightly different twist. Empathy is where you are able to use your own sort of experience of something to be able to understand sort of where that person is coming from. If somebody talks to me about their coming out process, right? As a queer person, I can have empathy for that because I know what it's like to be in that sort of position. Where if I'm talking to a student of color, a Black student, for instance, who's talking about some sort of thing, I can have sympathy, but as a person who's not Black, I can't understand sort of what it is to be those sort of things. Empathy can sometimes make you really more trustworthy when people see themselves in you and they can identify with you. Oftentimes they'll be like, oh, this person does get it because they've been there with me, which is great. But also it can make us more overwhelmed and more vulnerable to being sort of personally affected by different sort of things. With sympathy and other sort of things, we can say like, oh, I feel for you and these sort of things, but it doesn't affect us because it doesn't trigger any memories of trauma or our own experiences, where empathy does. And so that can be a double-edged sword, right? It does make us more trustworthy. It does make us have sort of an inside view, but it also can create some other sort of things for us that we have to be really careful about. And so neither one is preferable to the other. They just are two different things and something that you should know about. Now, thinking about these sort of things, and as I just said, sometimes we get overwhelmed with stuff. So the concept of compassion fatigue. Compassion fatigue is when you get so exhausted with trying to care about something, trying to help something, especially if it's overwhelming, that you just start to sort of disassociate and you start to get really worn down. For people who work in helping professions such as public health, such as mental health, this is a huge risk. There are definite sort of things that can push us over the edge. This is oftentimes when we think back to sort of the second week of class when we were looking at sort of the history of the asylums, a lot of those people that were abusive and other sort of things to the mentally ill, a lot of them had compassion fatigue and they didn't check in with themselves about what was going on, and so they ended up being cruel to the people that they were supposed to care about. How do we prevent compassion fatigue? Well, we have to balance it with healthy boundaries, right? We have to know when we are reaching that point of breaking and be able to step away, right? This is why self-care is really important, for us to be able to say like, you know what? I can't do this right now and I need to take a break. It's healthy and good to take breaks, especially when you are in a helping profession. There is a handout on Blackboard that talks about sort of boundaries and how to have healthier and better boundaries, and other sort of things. There's only so much that you can do. At some point, everybody has to act within their own self-interest. Sometimes that might never happen, especially if we're working with the persistently mentally ill. So you can't save everybody, right? And sometimes you just have to sort of acknowledge that of like, I've done all the things that I could do and this is an impossible situation, or there's some other sort of things that are going on. Again, that sort of metaphor of, you know, when you're on the airplane and they say, put on your mask first and then help other people with their masks. You can't save anybody if you're not able to breathe yourself, right? And so that's really what compassion fatigue is about. If you can't save yourself, then there's no way you can save others. So you have to be able to care for yourself and self-preserve. And it's okay to take breaks and come back. We are not, you know, super engaged, unlimited sort of batteries. It's okay to say, you know what, this right now is too much for me and I need to step away. I need to take a little break. Could be a 5-minute break, could be a day break, it could be a week break, whatever it is, we take a break and then we come back to it to be able to re-engage and be in better service to you. Sorry, loud dog. So, the last part of this lecture is talking about radical vulnerability. Radical vulnerability is really important to me. It's another thing that helps us to connect and be compassionate with people, is to say, hey, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to bring my whole self and not have to act like I'm bigger or stronger than I actually am. A lot of people struggle with this because we're taught in sort of contemporary American society that being vulnerable is a weak sort of thing. And I think that's totally wrong. Being vulnerable is really strong, and it's something that's really worthwhile and important. And I think it's much more strong than pretending to be okay when you're not. It takes practice. It's something that we don't all just come to naturally. We have to keep trying at different sort of things. And with different people, we have different senses of vulnerability. If somebody has hurt you continuously over and over in the past, they don't deserve your vulnerability. And part of your job is to protect yourself, right? And so boundaries and vulnerability go together to figure out sort of what's going to work best for you. So this week, you have some moments of Zen for coloring pages, and not just any coloring pages, swear word coloring pages. Lots of science on both of these sort of things. Coloring helps to increase mindfulness. It helps to get you out of sort of your head and doing other sort of things. It engages different parts of your brain. And then swearing. Swearing is something that helps to relieve pain and suffering. And so it's a really great sort of thing to do. So that is all on vulnerability and compassion. The next part is on sort of building support systems and these sort of things, resources and referrals. Much like a wrap, you can build a book of resources, referrals. Do that in the community where you live. So maybe if you're not from Chico and you're going back home, think about where are the places that I would go if somebody was having mental health distress? What are the places that take Medi-Cal? What are the places that offer meditation? What are the places that do these sort of things? And there's some other helpful hints on the slides for resources and referrals. Have a good week, and I will see you in 2 weeks.